Hello, hello, everybody. So we are back for another career and spirituality conversation. So my name is Julie Pone, and for those who don't know me yet, I support spiritual seekers having a career experience to reconcile what they do for a living with who they are as a soul. And today, to support me in this mission, I'm delighted to have Thom with me. Lucy Thom. Hi, Lucy. How are you today?
Hi, Julie. I'm well, thank you. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yes, I'm excited for this conversation. So we met recently with Lucy, and I've already had an overview of your career, and so that's why I'm super excited for to have everyone else discover your path. So, but before that, we always have a little grounding at the start of these sessions. So, let us start with that. So, for everyone who's able to close their eyes, you can do so now. And first, let's plant our feet firmly on the ground, press our feet on the ground for a moment with this intention to ground ourselves. You know, even having a little conversation with the earth right now, saying, hey, hi, I feel you. I connect with you. I thank you for allowing this human experience for us to have. And then once we've done that, let's move our attention and our focus back up into the area of our chest and the middle of our chest where our heart is. And let's connect with our heart. And maybe we can feel our hearts or hear our hearts. And we can also imagine or visualize as if our breath is flowing in and out directly from our hearts. And as we're doing that, I'm going to invite us to breathe a little slower and deeper than we usually do for about 5 cycles of breath. And I'll count them for us and let us know when we are done. And last one. And wonderful. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And ta-da! Welcome back.
Thank
It
you.
always feels like a new beginning.
It's amazing, isn't it? The difference.
Yes, Lucy. So thank you for joining, you know, for taking part. And so for those who are not familiar with you yet, you are currently a conflict resolution coach and mediator. So I'm interested in understanding how you've come to work in that field, considering that you started literally navigating the sea, you know, as your full-time job. But before we go into the career part, I'd love to ask you, you know, my typical first question, which is more around your acquaintance with spirituality. So what's your relationship to spirituality? What is it for you?
Well, I would say I'm very blessed which is not a word I've always been comfortable using.
Yeah.
I am very blessed to have a relationship with spirituality. And I think it's come gradually through different events, and also with hindsight. When I look back, for instance, you mentioned how I used to be navigating the seas as my career, and I didn't realize at the time that all those hours spent on watch, particularly the sunrises and the sunsets, and also the midnight watch, you know, when you'd be under the night sky, particularly when it was starry, all that time was actually a deeply reflective time. Okay, of course, there was all the times when there was stormy, and it was not reflective because we were very busy surviving, and yet again, though, that is the one time in a very particularly huge storm we were caught out in off Uruguay, that I found myself speaking to God, actually, because it was such a huge storm that a container ship in our vicinity lost 49 containers overboard. So, and we were on a 100-foot, beautifully and solidly built, very well designed wooden yacht, sailing yacht. And actually we were weathering the storm very well, except that many people won't necessarily know this, but those massive containers don't sink. They float, but just under the surface. But anyway, there was zero visibility because the rain was just horizontal and the seas were so huge. So so they, you know, we had no way of knowing if we were about to crash into one, and they are responsible for a lot of sinkings of yachts, those containers. So when we got an emergency message, I'm going back to 1998 now, so we didn't have we weren't on satellite phones, but we did get this. It was a bit like a receipt in a supermarket, emergency messages coming through, and one was reporting this ship, this container ship, losing these containers. Then we really felt our lives are in God's hands. You know, you do start. I don't think I was the only one. We were 8 crew on board, and I don't think I was the only one thinking in that way at that time.
I got chills just, you know, like as you're telling the story, you know,
yeah. So but I didn't appreciate, in a way, when I think about it, it does remind me a little bit of maybe a teenager's relationship with a parent, that, you know, you only reach out when you're really stuck. Otherwise, you know, you're too busy, you haven't got time. And I realized that probably was my relationship to spirituality in those days. Not really conscious of it, of this vast energy, you know, that is there, that we're very much a part of, that I believe is in us. And except when the chips were really down, and you know, then it's kind of like, God, please help. Just like teenagers with parents.
That's so funny. What did you you know, what are you saying to God in that moment? And also, you know, the way maybe some spiritual people, I know very much for myself, I steered away from religion a long time ago, and I went against religion. So when I came back onto the spiritual path, for me, spirituality was all about source, energy, and even just the word God, or like the idea that a personification of that energy I was not comfortable with that. So that's how I relate to the spiritual. But I've never been in the situation when I'm about to possibly die that I would have an impulse. So I wonder, is there, like, did you already have a relationship to spirituality in terms of speaking, in terms of God before that, or not? But suddenly in the situation, it all comes out, out of flight. Suddenly we remember that, we remember that. I don't know how to say it,
yes, that knowing, that like an innate knowing. Well, in a way, I suppose being British, and I did go to Sunday school when I was very little. I had that background. However, actually, we weren't particularly religious in my family, and very soon we were living abroad and only going to church at Christmas time, which so many people do. And I think I traveled in South America as an 18-year-old with a backpack, and so encountering the Catholic religion, and I was deeply shocked by the richness of the churches next to the poverty on the streets outside. And I remember reading books about people who'd had religious backgrounds or upbringings and then rebelled. And actually, at the time that we were in that storm, I think I was reading a book by the Dalai Lama called The Art of Happiness. So I was exploring lots of different things and questioning for me, religion, what I know now, comes from the word to bring together. So as soon as a religion, as soon as a group has a mantra or instructions that they are somehow superior, or that they're in fact encouraging division, then for me they're not a religion. So but back at that time, I wouldn't have therefore necessarily been that comfortable with even using the word God. But it is from my culture, it's in me, that Christian culture, Christian foundation, you might say. So in that moment, I think, I was basically saying, please God, save our souls, save, help us through this storm. And amazingly, we tried to raise, we had a very old HF radio. Look, now anybody seeing it would think it was from a World War II film or something. It was quite an old piece of kit. And I was trying to raise the Coast Guard in Argentina and Uruguay, and couldn't get through. I mean, the conditions were horrendous. So in a way, we're having interesting issues today with the weather. So what I did manage to do was send a fax, would you believe, to the International Rescue Centre in Falmouth in Cornwall, England. Whoa. Yeah, and we got a response. And I just said, we're fine. However, this is what we're experiencing: over 100-mile-an-hour winds, huge seas, and a container ship that's just lost, that's lost 49 containers in our vicinity. So we just would like somebody on shore to know of our situation. And then from that moment, we did a check-in every hour. And I must say that to get that response from the center, those people for us were suddenly big, like angels, you know.
Actually, speaking about your career, how did you get into sailing and how did you get out of sailing?
Well, good questions, because it wasn't something I planned as a career. It's certainly something I enjoyed, crewing in dinghies when I was a teenager. And then when I was studying geography at university, I had the opportunity, actually through joining the military, which I learned a lot from that time in the military, on many levels. And now with what I know, I wouldn't want to, you know, be in the military at all. However, what that gave me was the opportunity to train as and do what's called the Royal Yachting Association courses. And I graduated with a degree in one hand and a sailing qualification in another, and actually got a job. I was on track to do a master's, but having a year in between, and I was offered a position on a sail training yacht that Jim, who I've already mentioned, was the captain of Kentra. So you can also see what happened there. So as well as falling in love with offshore sailing, especially, I did.
And also with the captain?
Yes, I did. So in fact, I stayed on in sail training, and actually he and I were both skippers, and of course on different boats for a while. I was a skipper for the British forces for 3 years, and then we realized, you know, skippering separate boats, we were literally like ships that pass in the night. We weren't seeing each other very much. So we got together, we decided we would work together again, he as captain and myself then as the mate, because he had many more. He'd already done 2 circumnavigations by this time, one as a race. And again, you know, somebody now listening to me with us who is spiritual would probably go, oh, well, you were talking to the universe. I didn't know that's what I was doing. But I started saying to Jim, right, what is our ideal project? A really proper sailing boat, not a modern one with lots of buttons. We want to have ropes to pull on, owned by a really lovely family who want adventures, because a lot of boats spend a lot of time tied up in marinas. And we didn't want to just be polishing the hull, you know, and making the boat look pretty for like gin and tonic at sunset. We wanted to work for people who really wanted adventures, because that's what we wanted. So, and lo and behold, we got exactly that. In this beautiful yacht, Kentra. Sailors might recognize the name Fife. William Fife is a very famous yacht designer of from some years ago. So Kentra was built in 1923. So she just had her 100th birthday last year, and we were in Scotland to celebrate it with her owners, who still own her now. So, and they wanted to go around the world, and so we signed up, and then we recruited a crew. We needed a crew to do such a big voyage, and they joined us, and so I still draw on that experience now.
So what happened then? Like, what got you out of this career, which seemed to have brought you a lot of joy and satisfaction? What got you out of it?
Well, what got me out of it was I realized I was suddenly starting to read gardening books, which is a funny thing for a sailor to do. And it was as though I was being sort of drawn to be on shore again. So this was now after living and working on boats for the best part of 10 years, something like that. And I guess I was also getting older. So Jim and I did get married. We tied the knot, as we put on our invitation cards. And actually we both agreed that we didn't want to have children, and we asked the vicar. Interestingly, we did get married in a church. Both our mothers were very keen for that, and we were very happy to go along with that. And the vicar asked us, I normally bless a couple with many children. We said, no, whatever you do. No, we're a sailing couple. And then actually, so this potentially could sound spiritual to some people. I had such a vivid dream that I was breastfeeding a baby.
Wow.
It was such a powerful dream. It's really set something off in me. And I thought, gosh, maybe we are meant to have a family. And when I said this to Jim, he was so shocked. And really, but what about our sailing? And at that time, we'd taken on another old boat, 1911. Mariquita was a racing yacht, also a 5. A very exciting project, really super exciting. And yet there I was, kind of turning away from Jim too, in a way. But that was so strong, that calling. And so he said, well, I'm going to keep sailing. This is me. This is what I do, which means you'll be needing to be at home with any kids we have. And I said, yeah, I know that. And so that was the leaving of the sea, the hanging up of the welly boots. And and funnily enough, I have to admit, there were times when I thought, gosh, actually maybe things weren't so bad off Uruguay. Because parenting, and of course, nobody ever knows, do they, until they have kids. Yeah. That is so, can be so challenging. Yeah. Can be so challenging. And I love the fact that my kids are very spirited, and I was really keen not to crush their spirit. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, though, it's the balance between not crushing their spirit and having some workable rhythms in your day. And I realized I can't say to anybody I'm going to arrive at a certain time. I'll say I'll arrive anywhere between and a window of time, because when they're little and you're trying to get out the door and you have to change a nappy, for someone who'd been used to being on a boat with a watch system, mm-hmm. a watch system where the absolute understanding of everybody on board is you are never late for your watch.
Oh, okay.
Unless, like, if it's the engineer and there's an issue, with the generator or some system on board, then of course. But it's just one of those absolute, nobody, you just do not be late for your watch. So for me, to suddenly not be able to leave the house when I was planning to leave the house, because that's just not what happens when you've got little ones. It was quite challenging a lot of the time. Yeah.
So what are the consequences of that in your life? Such a big change in something that might seem details for some people, but that were obviously really values, and suddenly you're finding yourself living in such a different way that you used to. what's been the impact on you? And I'm really tempted to ask, were there any regrets or at the time?
Well, no regrets. And at the same time, well, actually, that's not true. I tell you what I do regret. I regret that I denied myself the honesty of saying I'm finding this hard. I didn't give myself permission to reach out for help when I could have really done with reaching out for help. I think after my first baby, I was suffering with some postnatal depression, but just like quite mildly. But you know, I was a roughy tufty sailor who backpacked around South America, who'd been a troop commander. You know, I didn't do depression. That was my arrogance, if you like. I see that now. It is an arrogance. I don't say that. I'm not beating myself up about it. I'm just saying that's the thing. You know, I think certainly parenting is very humbling, and so is sailing, actually, in a way, when we're in those moments of, dear God, please save us, you know. But then a lot of the time when sailing, you know, when one's career is going very well, and with the racing yacht, we had a great first season. You know, I think I lacked the humility and probably the self-love, actually, when I think about it, to just give myself permission to go, wow, this is hard. I'm finding this really hard. So Jim never really realized. And so that started to cause a breakdown in communication, actually, between us. So that would be the regret. And also, for instance, you know, if people said, gosh, you know, don't you miss sailing? I would be like, oh no, because again, I'm not giving myself, oh no, I love my kids, I love being a mum, you know, trying to be all just, I'm fine, you know, when actually of course I was missing sailing massively. Not just sailing, missing all the things we've just been talking about, which, you know, I love your questions and what that brings up in terms of my, you know, memories of the sailing, because there's a lot of depth, actually, to that whole experience.
Sounds like you are denying yourself to voice your true feelings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is that because maybe when you're well, I guess in the military for sure, but even maybe on the boats, like, you know, there is no place for how do you say, whining, or, you know, for
moaning and complaining. To an extent, I would say so. I think it was also my identity of myself. So yes, it was about not feeling as though one had a voice, or giving oneself permission to really express, and identity. It was I think, you know, very often, of course, there is that culture. You could say there's an external culture, and because of that culture, I can't express myself, and we can put the blame out there. What I've realized more recently in my life is that actually we are our own. There is that expression, you know, you're your own worst enemy. Well, I think it was mostly me who, you know, just had this identity for myself of being, you know, wanting to sort of be in control, in as much as cool, calm, and collected, and doing well, doing all right, you know, rather than kind of admitting, oh, you know, I'm really struggling, or I'm really upset. I've used to find it really hard to cry, for instance. I'm much better at it now. I've been working on it.
The learning curve, and like now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being authentic, you know, being vulnerable. That's that's it, isn't it? You know, it's this fear of showing vulnerability.
It's funny because as you're talking, I can't help but thinking about the start of our conversation. And when you actually, during the storm, you reached out for support before you were even meant to reach out for support, you know, and you could do it then.
Yes.
And you, like, can you pinpoint what's the difference?
That's interesting, isn't it? What is the difference? Yeah, well, do you know, I suppose then it was I was a professional sailor. It was, you know, I was the mate, so I was the second in command, and I was responsible therefore not just for my life but the lives of all those people on board, and I felt I could think straight. I think I was better at thinking straight. You know, it was like, okay, this is the situation. We can't get through on the radios. These containers we could hit one and then we'll be in the life rafts. Yeah. Wouldn't it be really useful that somebody is aware of our situation? So thinking straight was something I found, again, easier on the at sea. Whereas when I became a mum, something happened and it was like I kind of lost that.
But also what you describe you described a lot of very factual things that were happening on the boat. So maybe was it the realm of, you know, tangibles and factual elements that were driving decision making versus as a mom there is a lot more of the intangible, the emotions, feelings that are less measurable, etc., that is coming into play.
Yes, I think you're spot on there. At sea, what I was doing a lot, which I wasn't necessarily even conscious I was doing it, but I was going in, looking inward for answers, you know, to really tune in to some sort of innate thinking, or whatever you would call that, guidance, like an inner guide. And initially when I was parenting, I think I could have done with doing that more. And instead I fell into the trap of probably reading too many books. How to do this, what to do if your baby, blah blah, you know. I think some of those books can be helpful, but I think we're meant to, and this goes for anything actually. I think we're meant to tune in to our inner guidance more, or our higher self, or whatever people, however people call that. Yeah. That inner knowing, and certainly in a sailing environment, one has the time, and therefore you develop the habit, so that then when you don't have very much time, like quickly you got to get the sails down, or you've been nurturing that habit, so it's something you're just doing. And I think I lost that ability to an extent when I became a mum. Yeah,
that's interesting, because then, so on the boat it can be extremely stressful and near borderline life-threatening. But then when it's not, then it's calm and there is time to reflect, etc. So it's more of it reminds me more of the times where as humans we were living in a much more simple way, and that we would only have our fight or flight being triggered occasionally, and with ample time to recoup in between. Whether now modern life has it, and whether it's the corporate world or parenting, lots of other things, there is never time to get out of this constant pressure. There is no time to get in between the stressful times. There is no unstressed time to get back to ourselves. So our nervous system get activated in unnatural ways, and it makes a lot of sense to me that then you didn't have the capacity to tune in. I mean, when we are in this, it's a chronic fight or flight, let's call it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really, really astute observation, and I wholeheartedly see what you're saying.
Okay, so we're back after an interruption due to bad weather and bad tech conditions. But so let's take it from where we left off.
I know that we left off before, didn't we, about saying how does one get from being a mate to a mediator, which is what I'm doing now currently. In one sense, on board a boat with, you know, where you've got a crew of I don't know, 5 or more, the captain, the mate acts as apart from other roles, as a bridge, if you like, between the captain and the crew.
Yeah.
And also, so that's a lot of communication. So the captain would say, you know, okay, I think we're going to need to leave harbour at this time, and then it's the mate who needs to talk to the crew to say and make sure the boat's ready effectively.
Okay.
And also just on a longer voyage, you know, having a bit of a finger on the pulse of how everybody's doing and that kind of thing. And of course on a boat, especially when you're on an ocean passage, if people have any kind of conflict situation or tension, you can't just kind of say going off for a walk. You know, you can't, like, it's hard to get away from each other. You can go up the rig, you can go to the end of the bowsprit on a classic boat, but yeah, so it's quite an interesting melting pot in a way of dynamics and really seeking to clear the air. You know, you can't really afford to have things just swept under the carpet on a boat, I would say. Yeah.
So you're a team, and then you have, like, on top of having to manage the technicalities and having things run smoothly, you also then have to manage people's psychology then, in a sense.
Yeah. And including, you know, including my own.
Of course, yes.
So yeah, I learned a lot, and I think talking of spiritual experiences, there was one ocean passage we did from Fiji to Vanuatu, which is about 700 nautical miles, so that's about 1,300 kilometers, say.
Okay.
And the owners were with us, and for some while it's like this tension had been building on board, and you know, it just didn't feel good at all, because the boat is built really well and is very strong. It's we, the you know, the human beings on board, that then also need to be strong, and a strong team, in order to sail well and keep the boat safe. And that's not so challenging if the weather's fine, but in that part of the Pacific, the weather can change very suddenly. And I was just really thinking, gosh, you know, something needs to happen to disrupt. It was like we were in this vicious circle. And so actually, when I think back, what I was doing was communicating with, you know, some people might say, well, maybe it was my higher self, or maybe it was the universe, and I stayed awake the whole night. just reflecting on this situation and how to approach the owner about it. And so the image I got in my head was of a bridge. And that basically it was like, there was this chasm had formed between him, especially, not so much his wife, and the crew. And it was giving such a bad feeling, on the boat. Everybody was suffering. So the next morning, they were on deck at the back of the boat, which is the owner's area. And I invited myself into their area, which is, unusual. And I think Jim was partly probably glad that I was taking action, and also thinking, oh God, what's she doing now, sort of thing, a little bit.
Did you know you were going to do that or not?
Well, I did. I had said to him, look, I did say to him, look, I've really thought hard about this, and I'm just going to ask him what is the matter, actually, and be curious to know. And that's exactly what I did. I said, look, we're all aware of this, kind of atmosphere on the boat at the moment. Is there something that's bothering you? What's up? And he really, talked, and he said, well, this is, I don't feel part of the decision making, and Jim just alters course and without kind of coming and speaking to me, and there was just this whole kind of, in a way, misperception, if you like, because if Jim probably felt he shouldn't bother him every time, and also sometimes it's hard to articulate what you just get a gut feeling about, right, it's time to alter course, and you can't necessarily explain it. And the owner is a really intelligent guy, an engineer, an electrical engineer by professional background, so he was really used to understanding things, and sometimes you kind of go, I just got this really strong sense it's time to alter course, and we just need to get on and do it, and when I enabled Jim and him to have that conversation together, then he was slapping Jim on the back and saying, look, let's just understand each other, that and the whole there was this sense of release on the boat. And it was a good job, because that night actually I was on watch, and I was looking at the radar, and you could pick up squalls on the radar, very dense wet clouds, and I thought I was looking at just quite a small squall that would go through quite quickly, anyway, that was a mistake, because actually this thing turned into quite a storm, quite a gale. And in fact, so we had to have everybody up, all hands on deck, so to speak, to get some sails down. And I'll always remember, so Jim's at the wheel, and sailing, the seas really picked up now, sailing down these, like surfing down these big waves. And when you're surfing down the waves with the wind more or less behind you, you have to be ever so careful, because if you go too far one way, you can do what's called an accidental jibe, where the sail would get caught the wrong side of the wind and would come crashing across. Probably in those conditions, you'd lose the rig. So Tim, the bosun, and I, we're right on the bowsprit on the front of the boat, flipped on, we've got harnesses on, but we're balancing on this, standing on this sort of wire with a rope net underneath, but we're trying to pull the headsail down, because the one we've got up is too big for the conditions, but it's filling with air every time it tries to get out, and it's like doing these pull-ups to get this thing down. And I just remember thinking, wow, that was another moment where you just go, gosh, if anybody makes a mistake now, this could be really serious. And the owners were brilliant. They were helping out as well. We were all a great team. And I don't know, sometimes you think, gosh, what amazing timing, to have cleared the air just in time to then be able to really pull together and get through that situation.
That's we could argue that was good intuition.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. And again, I think this thing of intuition, we all have it. And yet, in order to access it, perhaps we need stillness and moments of quiet. And with these phones and this technology that we're using now is amazing, and we need to learn to turn it off sometimes, I think, or not always rush to answer it or keep up with every email and all the messages. It's can be quite overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, and also, like, interestingly, how we could see it also the other way, as the universe, the universe provided, like, in a way, an opportunity for team building. I know.
Yes, absolutely.
Challenging team building exercise for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, literally, Jim remembers that there's helming for our lives, he calls it.
Oh,
because
okay.
when Tim and I were on that bowsprit, we were in a very vulnerable position, but we had to be out there to get the sail down.
No, we could argue that the team building in corporate situation are probably not as life-threatening as the one you got.
Yeah, exactly. It is that thing, though, isn't it, of just pushing ourselves. And also being in a situation of healthy codependence. Rather than unhealthy.
And so all of these experiences, so when and how and why did you decide to harness this and bring it into like onshore?
Yes. So I think with the girls getting older, and I started wondering what I was thinking. Do I become a teacher? So I was helping out a lot in there, not so much teaching, but just in the office and then the reception of the school they were at. Anyway, so I was thinking, well, I'm really passionate about communication. On one of the retreats I went on to try and seek the root cause and get myself healed from the breathing condition that started when I was pregnant with my second daughter. I had this amazing experience. It was a raw food retreat, and you had to fast and then juice, and one night the room just seemed to be filled with light, and it wasn't the curtains were closed, there was no moon, it was I didn't turn the lights on. It was really quite an experience, and one of the ones where I'm starting now to be more aware of spirituality, because and just this huge, like a huge kind of brightly lit word appeared, and it was communication. That was it, and I was kind of like, okay. And of course, quite a few practitioners I consulted had said to me, well, it's to do, if it's near your vocal cords where you're getting this inflammation and this tissue growth, it must be to do with your voice. You need to find your voice and so on. So so I went on some workshops with nonviolent communication, and then facilitated a book group. I didn't qualify as an instructor in it, because I love lots of parts of it, but I didn't want to just be an NVC.
Okay, gotcha.
Coach. So I draw on it a lot, and I draw on other things too. And then I looked into mediation, and found, and it was really interesting because a lot of the courses were like, you would get certified with like the national UK mediation, certificate, but they seemed quite like theoretical learning, and ticking boxes, to pass the test kind of thing. And then I discovered another course which wasn't, means I'm not certified by the national body of mediation, but it was I chose this course because it was very experiential. So on the course itself, what we were learning as mediation practice was having, like, I got to really realize, of course I have filters, in my perception of things. Of course, I have these voices that just, a chatter. And what I loved about this course was it was very much about having faith in the people who are in the conflict situation being the experts of their own lives. So when I meet, when I'm practicing as a mediator, I'm not there to advise. I'm there to really hold the space in a way which helps the clients to feel safe to express their, themselves authentically and be vulnerable and explore, and so, okay, I might ask questions. I, of course, make sure that one person doesn't dominate the conversation. But in a way, some of the most creatively successful mediation meetings are when the clients in the end turn around and almost go, "Oh, you're still here," because I've set things up in a way and given them the support they needed to just talk constructively and with respect and so on. I've been really glad to find that, path. Yeah.
So the way I understand your transition is that that was a conscious decision to stop sailing because you were going to raise your daughters.
Yes.
And at some stage you got this health condition that started to affect your own voice, and in healing that, you got confirmation that this was a career path for you to also help other people with their communication. Is that right?
That's a beautiful summing up. Yeah, in a nutshell, absolutely. And curiously, I didn't realize the extent to which I wasn't expressing myself authentically. And then what I realized is there's a lot, basically people pleasing, which many people suffer from that, I think. It's just so ingrained as a survival tool, a coping mechanism, a way to be loved, so that's what you kind of think. Because of course, a lot of the time, I might think I'm pleasing that person, but I haven't actually said, what do you want? What can I, you know what I mean? I'm assuming I know what will please them. So So that's been a huge revelation. And in a way, I have to thank my clients for that, because bearing witness to people with challenges, sometimes, you know, it could be years, like a father and grown-up son who haven't had contact for years. To see them, you know, well, first of all, it takes courage to even invest, you know, yourself and I would say, make that step toward to reconciliation and finding a way forward. And then to bear witness to people being really authentic. You know, I would reflect on that, say, afterwards, and I felt quite humbled a lot of the time by what I observed, and then that, you know, in contrast, I could see how inauthentic I was often being myself. Yeah.
But you're saying that, you know, but is it, do you reflect on that having been the whole of your life, or because it from the outside and from everything that you told us about your life on the boat, it seems like, you know, like you wouldn't really have had the luxury of being people pleasing, like, you know, managing a team there, or was there some already there, or like did it start when you changed life and you were like full-time on land and raising your children?
Yeah, I think it was more that. I think definitely there was something very grounding, which seems a funny thing to say when you're on a boat, but just that thing of being so close to nature and having time, which meant that I don't think I suffered from that as much at all.
Yeah.
There's a difference between enabling a reconciliation process by setting some parameters, or, you know, providing a foundation and then letting things roll, and then trying to kind of, look, would everybody just get on, please? Do you know what I mean? That kind of anxiety of that, you know, we just can't have anybody falling out, and I think I started to head more in that direction, coming ashore. It's like I lost something coming ashore. Yeah. And I've been it's taken me many years, you know, to realize it, and then to work on it and to heal it. Yeah, basically the big difference is coming from love. Am I coming from love? You know, am I coming from my heart, or am I coming from fear, you know, and anxiety?
And Lucy, because I know we haven't touched on it quite so far about your illness, but I know that had a significant impact on your life and choices. Is there something you want to tell us about it? That, you know, some lessons that it that you learned along the way of this experience?
Yes, that would be good to just explore it for a moment, because, well, for a start, more and more women seem to be affected by this condition. It's idiopathic, which means the doctors don't understand what really causes it, what the pathology is. Idiopathic subglottic is where it tends to occur, which is just beneath the vocal cords. And stenosis means obstruction.
Okay. So tell us the name like again, because that complicated name is?
Yes, idiopathic subglottic stenosis.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had now about 15 procedures under general anaesthetic. Okay. And basically because when it starts to occur, you know, I get a bit breathless. I'm a bit like, oh, you know, this isn't great. And And then the good news is it sometimes frees off again. So essentially tissue, luckily non-cancerous, but tissue starts to grow across the airway, which means that instead of having a diameter all through my airway down to my lungs of about 16 to 18 millimeters, it starts getting narrower and narrower. And what it feels like is breathing through a straw. It's, you know, when it's really bad, instead of being able to really just breathe without an effort, it's kind of like sucking the air in, you know. And actually, I think then you get into a vicious circle with it, because the more I'm sort of having to make an effort, and then I get tension in my neck and shoulders and upper body, which probably doesn't help. And I wonder how many other chronic conditions there are that, you know, where there's this similar kind of vicious circle type setup. And so, yeah, I realized that one of the things we can look at anybody with a chronic illness of any kind, or even just a chronic situation, is how to disrupt that vicious circle, you know, how to interrupt it. And so with the breath being limited, I mean, it impacts everything, because I go, you know, suddenly I can't just dash about. I can't necessarily feel confident about speaking. And I have been a public speaker about some years ago. It was about economics, you know, after like in the 2016 sort of time. So that's what, 7-8 years ago. And now with the coaching work that I do as well. And I think in 2021, I was giving talks about my research that I was doing in 2020. And so all of that suddenly feels potentially unachievable, you know. And of course we use the breath to center ourselves, don't we? So one thing, what I've realized is silver linings, you know, look for the silver linings. So silver linings for me has been, well, it slows me right down. Actually, maybe it slows me right down.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, this problem of rushing about and trying to do too much and So and I do get, you know, make more time for meditating and for going within and contemplating and reflecting on things. And I'd love to have, I do start my day with something spiritual every day, but sometimes it's 5 minutes, you know, if I'm honest. Having said that, I've heard tuning into lots of different spiritual teachers and even medical doctors who are very interested now in the psycho-emotional aspects of illness and health. Spirituality doesn't have to mean, I don't think, spending hours cross-legged on the floor, you know. It's really actually even better if we can incorporate it, I think, into, you know, than being in the now, in our lives, you know, when I'm washing up, you know, just really observing the soap and being thankful for the water and, you know, that kind of thing, rather than, oh, I've got to quickly do the washing up. It's like, oh, you know, now I'm going to wash up. So that's one advantage, I think, and I think sometimes I wonder how often these conditions, whether it's, you know, like my breathing thing and or arthritis or other things that people are suffering from. I wonder how often these are really messengers, these symptoms. And it's in our kind of Western medicine, you know, we aim to suppress symptoms, don't we, or manage symptoms. Yeah. And of course, that's important. It has its place. But what I think we're really being invited to do is get to the root cause of something, you know, to heal, actually, rather than just manage. So,
in a way, we're killing the messenger, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were to summarize, like, you know, this illness, disease, whatever I want to call it.
Yeah, a disease. Yeah.
What lessons? So you said, okay, we said it's often a messenger. So what would have been, what do you think were the messages for you?
So the messages for me are speak your truth.
Okay.
Be, you know, express yourself authentically. Yeah. Take your space in the world. Yeah. And the amazing doctor who helped me with Emily's birth, my second daughter's birth, which actually was also quite a spiritual experience when I look back. She said that to me after the birth, you know, when this thing came back, after a couple of years, it started coming back. And she just said, you know, she very firmly looked me in the eyes and said, you have to take your space in this world. You know, stop going around trying to please everybody, trying to make sure everybody gets on. And she pointed out as well, that is in a way a controlling thing, not a loving, you know, pleasing thing. If you're kind of like anxious about conflict. Yeah. I guess that's also, you know, I was drawn to mediation training in order to learn not to be anxious about conflict, to see conflict as an opportunity for a deeper connection and for learning and creativity. So that's, I think, been the message. And I wonder how many other women, and I am going to invite them to an introduction to exploring this, to see if any of them would like to go on a journey with me into what I've called the courageous conversation space, to see if actually they might discover that whilst they think they've been, you know, pretty, you know, like not shy, and because nobody ever had me as shy or not, you know, not a communicator, but it's like, yeah, but are you saying what you really want to say? Are you leading your life in a way that is from your heart, you know, is aligned with your values? Or are you just being like one of those, you know, those foam mattresses that take the shape of, you know, you being like one of those, like just fitting around, you know.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's such a good image. Yes, fitting around everyone else.
Yeah. Trying to be nice, trying to, you know.
A memory foam pleaser.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. So that would be interesting. And I hear that arthritis can be linked to suppressed anger, you know, and sometimes what I'm learning is that these things that we've suppressed in us, that we haven't given ourselves permission to express, need to be heard and acknowledged. And that can be it, you know. It doesn't necessarily need to be a kind of great complicated process. I think what's difficult is having the courage to let these things come out. That's what's hard for people.
And so is that what your courageous conversation space is providing? That
yes, yeah, exactly.
environment for people to do that? And
yes.
so when is it something that you're doing on a regular basis? Can you tell us so that the audience knows
Sure.
when
Well,
are you doing it, etc. And
yeah, absolutely. So I'm just putting it together now to get ready for the spring, to make a start in the spring. And what I envisage is running it for like 9 months. So I'll do some introductions just so people can come along and get like a taster of what it's going to be like. Then they can decide if it's for them or not, because I think it's something that would need to really resonate with people. And to meet, have a meeting in person, like over 2 days. And at the beginning, and then 3 months later, another in person, and then in between, it would be on Zoom.
Okay, good.
Which, part of me thinks, but it does make it more accessible, and it also means that people can be part of it who aren't, and we don't have to all be living close together,
And is it going to be one-on-one or also group, or a mix of the two?
It'll be a group. With the possibility of some one-on-one, coaching along the way. But what I've learned and discovered from my own experience of doing quite a lot of sort of personal development myself is how much more I can learn in a group, because if I'm listening to somebody else expressing themselves, and then the course leader or the coach or facilitator having that interaction with that other person, I'm sitting there kind of going, oh, wow, suddenly seeing things for myself from listening to someone else. So I think we can be a real treasure for each other in a group situation like that. So
I see that very clearly as you're saying it, that the gift of not always being in conversation with the person, so you can be the witness and so observe the dynamics that happens. We're not involved in it. Gives an extra level of reading to maybe what could be the person's issue that you can help resolve.
Yes.
That's so valuable. In a way, it reminds me of then that would be the part where you can sit on the boat and reflect, watching the sunset or the sunrise. Like, when you can have that.
That bearing witness, whether it's like you say on the boat, the elements, and or people, it's actually hugely valuable, I think.
Oh God, like I feel like we could talk for many hours about going deep into so many of the topics that we've touched on. But like all things need to come to an end. But before that, is there something that we haven't talked about, that I haven't asked you, that you want to express now that is important?
Well, thank you, Julie. I think the one thing I would love to offer people is that if they're trying lots of things and it doesn't seem to be working, because that's where I was definitely, I realized I wasn't giving myself permission actually to heal, really, to receive that help. So I was asking for it on the one hand, really wanting it. I'm tuning in with the group called the Circle of Friends, which is coming from Bruno Gröning, that people can look that up online. That's an amazing, and I'd been going there for some years and feeling this energy, but not, you know, not getting fully better. And I realized I wasn't actually giving myself permission to heal, to let go. So that would be, you know, just one point to really make. And also about timing. So, you know, that I said the doctor who helped me with my second daughter's birth told me the issue, you know, and I could hear her, but I couldn't, at that time, I couldn't really take it on, you know. So I was hearing it very much like intellectually, but not, you know, with my whole being. And we need to be gentle on ourselves, you know, because I've done the thing of, you know, berating myself because, oh, you know, why can't I just sort this out, you know? And then I realized, you know, I'm berating myself, and then I can berate myself for berating myself. And when actually, you know, when you think about little ones, when we're little learning to walk, can you imagine a baby going from crawling to learning to walk? If we had a negative self-talk, we would never have, you know, we would have stayed crawling probably, because of the number of times, you know, you fall down. And when you fall down, you don't, I'm sure none of us gave ourselves a hard time for falling down when we were learning to walk. And it's the same now. I really, you know, invite people to have self-compassion, and to trust in timing and give themselves time. And yeah, another opportunity to have a conversation with you would be amazing. There are more things on the tip of my tongue, but I know time is time.
Yes, time. Time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Lucy. Like, such a fascinating life that you've lived so far, with so many lessons and for us to, you know, learn from. And I'm sure, like, you know, many people in the audience will resonate with what you've shared, and we've had those messages as well, you know, in maybe wrapped up in different bows.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah,
for sure. So thank you so much for spending that time with us, and we'll be talking again, I'm sure. And in the meantime, look after yourself, and to everyone else, see you next week for another career and spirituality conversation. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye, Lucy.